Hello, everybody, and happy Monday. Happy eclipse. We had the lunar eclipse last night. It was around 3 a.m. Eastern. That was the time mine was given. There's a whole argument going on in an astrology group about the time of the eclipse. But anyway, we are under the full moon eclipse, the Libra Venus ruled lunar eclipse. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll have the Aries new moon eclipse that is exactly conjunct Chiron. And if you want to know more about the centaurs and the eclipses, I highly recommend giving my interview with Melanie Reinhardt a listen. It's got rather a lot of listens, watches, views, or whatever you want to call it already. But here is the week ahead forecast. I didn't get it done yesterday because chaotic eclipse energy, but anyway, better late than never. So this morning we had the eclipse and it was at 5 degrees Libra Aries. And you can see that now, if I put now, the moon is only moved to 9 degrees Libra. So we are still under this lunar eclipse energy. And just so you know, the new and full moon energies last about 3 days until the moon and the sun are 30 degrees apart. And that's when they enter their waxing or waning gibbous phase. The moon phases are quite interesting to work with too, but this is going to be a week ahead forecast for in general. So we are now right in the middle of the eclipse season. We've got 2 weeks between the eclipses. It's not always a full moon and then followed by a new moon. Sometimes it's the other way around. This time it's full followed by new. And if you want the daily energies as, all the lunar aspects, I suggest subscribing to my Substack blog. There's a link in the description where I do a daily writing talking about the energies. But the biggest thing I can say about the next 24 hours really is that early tomorrow, the moon, let's actually get this, will conjunct the south node, the Libra south node. And the nodes, I use the true calculation because I just find it more accurate. Tend to sit at the same degree for weeks around eclipse season because eclipses are new and full moons conjunct the nodal axis. So while we're still under this eclipse energy, very early tomorrow morning on the East Coast, you can always adjust for your time zones if you want the exact times. The moon will conjunct the south node, and the Libra south node is really about, well, the Aries and Libra nodes are about integrating the I within the we. But because it's a south node in Libra, this is really about stopping, smoothing things over, stopping codependence, taking a stand for yourself. But it's not about, turning around and trying to attack anybody or anything like that, because Libra does rule war as well. But it really is about kind of standing up, knowing who you are. And this is the journey of this Aries North Node. With Chiron, kind of finding that core self, finding that seat of consciousness and finding that Aries kind of wonder at the world and starting to see the world with wonder and stopping kind of any tendencies to smooth things over just for the sake of it. That doesn't mean you don't have to be diplomatic anymore. But it also means that energy of codependence and never standing up for yourself or knowing who you are. It's also really about finding who you are within relationships. So that's really where we're at. We start the week with that. I went over all the lunar aspects in my Substack blog. Now, early tomorrow morning, and I did write about this, but let's have a look at the chart. Mercury, we're heading towards a Mercury retrograde, and Mercury is turning retrograde on April the 1st, which I think is a big cosmic joke right in the middle of the eclipse seasons. And Mercury today conjuncts Eris for the first time. Mercury will conjunct Eris 3 times. I put all the dates on my blog. I'm not going to go through them again. And Mercury is kind of slowing down station retrograde on April the 1st. So by the time of this, really, we're about in the station zone. It's usually about 5 days either side. We're getting there. But Eris is the truth teller. Eris is the table shaker. And if you remember the story of Eris, she threw the apple of discord into the party of all the elite gods and goddesses, which made them fight over who was the fairest, and it led to the Trojan War, because Eris was an outsider. She was deemed ugly and she was never invited to the parties because she was quite an angry, ragey kind of energy. One of her other tales is about her roaming the battlefields and dousing herself in blood. She's actually the brother of the sister of Aries, which is Mars kind of thing, the ruler of Aries. And so she does have that kind of ragey energy, but I always think of her as rage at people being left out, rage for the outsiders, rage for when you feel exiled and alienated. Okay, so this goes back to getting to know yourself again, and my favorite topic, self-care. But Mercury crossing Eris is going to bring some of that up for you. But Mercury is a transmutation and transformation agent. He's a shapeshifter, he's non-binary, he goes either way, he goes between the gods and humans. He's very much a messenger between the two, transferring these messages from the cosmos to humanity or to the earth, whichever you want to talk about. Of course, the stories have said it's to humans because we're so special. But anyway, you'll be getting a lot of incoming information about what you're going to have to kind of review and reflect upon during the Mercury retrograde that comes up. So there may be some anger bubbling up to be transmuted and transmuted into love, because after that, Mercury, and I'm not going to change the chart exact because it's almost exact already, right after Mercury conjuncts Eris and things get shaken up a bit or truths come to the surface, Mercury trines Hecate, the way shower. I see her as well, she is a triple moon goddess. I see her as having the gates to our own underworld, middle world, and upper world, mind, body, and spirit. And Hecate is in Leo, the sun sign, the sign that rules the heart, and that's the center. And that is saying that that's where you need to tune in, transfer all these kind of ragey energies and sit with them in your heart and see how you can act on them with love. Okay, so that's the Mercury action on the 26th. Other things that we have going on the 26th are my favorite wise owl, goddess of creative intelligence, is let's see, I'm going to get her exact, is going to exactly square Juno in Virgo. And this is at 8 degrees, and we are in an 8 year, and this is a mutable square, and it's widely square to Saturn too. So this makes it a T-square, a mutable T-square of change. And Pallas Athena is giving us the ideas, the creative intelligence to solve the problems and how we can move forward and build better and healthier relationships with strong boundaries, mind, body, spirit again. So everything is coming down into mind, body, spirit. Right after, in fact, 1 minute after that square, so happening at the same time, Venus, the ruler of the Libra eclipse, by the way, so still we have the moon in Libra, is in Pisces, the sign of her exaltation. But Venus meets Nessus, who has been doing a rather powerful job of revealing generational, intergenerational abuse patterns. And Nessus says the buck stops here. I've had enough. So there's an energy, with it being a full moon lunar eclipse of, and now we're in the waning phase, of letting go of some of those old patterns and beliefs, particularly in Pisces, and moving into a state of trust and surrender. Okay. And then Eris will complete the trine to Hecate late, very late on the 26th. So let's move on to the 27th. As usual, I'm getting pretty wordy again. Venus is still in action, and on the 28th, Venus in Pisces starts to move away from Nessus, and she will oppose Black Moon Lilith, which I cannot get exact because true Black Moon Lilith does not show up, but you can see the opposition is really happening at the same time. And this is saying there's let go. There may be some shame come to the surface, some vulnerability. Black Moon Lilith is often where we've been shamed, or where the divine feminine part of us, or the yin part of us, or the exhale part of us has been shamed. That emotional kind of intelligence energy, the receptive energy, you know, all those words saying you're too emotional, you know, you're silly, your imagination's silly, all of those kind of things. Venus is opposing that and saying, no more, I've had enough. This is a big part of me. And we are coming into a time where we're being called to realize we are both wave and particle, to quote quantum physics. The wave really being kind of that more emotional, you know, kind of flowy energy, the particle being kind of the more masculine, for want of a better word, solid kind of energy that is real to us, at least. Then also on the 27th, Jupiter comes up, and again, I'm not going to adjust it to get it exact. You can see they're at the same degree. Jupiter squares my wonderful Cariclo. Again, please go and watch, you know, my interviews with Melanie Reinhardt on my YouTube channel on Tea with Louise playlist, and I'll link to it on this. But also, you know, think of her as this space holder for healing. She is going to be in this ongoing sextile aspect with her partner, husband Chiron, through the eclipses, and moving to several exact sextile aspects in 2028 and 2033. They actually began in the early 90s because of their orbits and their retrogrades. They've been going back and forth, but they're really working together on these eclipses. And Cariclo, you know, she has this doula, midwife, death doula kind of quality as well. This kind of nursing, supportive kind of energy, not in a doormat kind of way, but Chiron, you know, had his wound that would not heal for a long time, according to the myth. And who would have held space for him through that time but his partner in life, one of the cosmic couples, this beautiful Cariclo. But she was holding space for weaving a new story and creating a new story, weaving and spinning and unspinning the old stories, until the point where Chiron gave up his immortality to save Prometheus. You can go and read about the myth if you like. And and then died, which meant that he was no longer in pain from his wound. And to my mind, that's really representative of getting in touch, that she holds space for us to understand our humanness, our connection, that we are this human being on this earth and that we are mortal. So it's about getting in touch with our mortality as well. So Jupiter, the square to this, is expanding everything and helping us to root down on the earth in these fixed signs. Taurus and Aquarius are fixed signs that likes to make things real, that likes to get solid. And, you know, I talk about it all the time. We are really being called to stop this ascension nonsense and to talk about descending into our humanness and healing our core self as best we can. So on to March the 28th. That was actually on March the 27th, most of those aspects, but you could see them anyway. And it's all happening all week anyway. On to March the 28th, though, we have rather an interesting aspect that I am going to show you exact. So let's go to this. So Thursday, March the 28th, Venus, you know, she's just been past Nessus saying the buck stops here. It's time to dream a bigger dream, a more holistic, interconnected life. And she is sextile to Uranus. But, and I have to quickly draw some lines on here. This is at 20 degrees, okay? And so she is sextile Uranus, and that is square to the 20-degree Venus star point from last August the 13th, 2023, where Venus and the Sun met in the middle of Venus retrograde. And Venus is now heading towards disappearing behind the Sun for her next star point. I'm actually doing a webinar on that. So, but this is a quincunx, and it's in these aspects to Uranus. Venus is sextile to Uranus, and Venus rules the sign that Uranus is in. And Taurus is very rooted, very much about values, very much about the senses, literally, about the material world, things that we can touch, including money and all kind of things like that. And there's Leo, about putting on your own crown, claiming your sovereignty. And again, this is the body, this is the heart, and this is spirit. So I'm going to say this is mind, body, and spirit again as well. So, you know, this is really about kind of getting connected, but realizing that we have to adjust to come into balance down on earth and stop this nonsense again of we're ascending to some unknowable place, and we'll find out that when we die, but that's my opinion on that one. Just after that, Hygeia will move into Aries. Hygeia is the seer goddess of preventative holistic health. She is health and hygiene. She can represent both disease and health and clean and preventing illness. And she's going to move into Aries for the next eclipse, the sign of I am and the self and our identity. So Hygeia moves in at 10:35 a.m. on the 28th. Later that day, on the 28th, the Aries sun comes up to 8 degrees and aspects Pallas, Athena, and Juno. Remember that they have been in this square. We just had the exact square. So forming a trine, supportive, flowy, fire, passionate, creative, active. I want to start something. I want to create something, trying to Pallas Athena, the wise owl. And it's going to be about coming into wholeness within ourselves. You're going to have a cat interrupting in a minute. Lunar has decided she wants to come and interrupt. She may interrupt or not. She's a bit lunatic at the moment, lunar literally, because of the eclipse. So early on Friday, on Venus Day, Ceres, the Great Mother, how we nurture and how we are nurtured in the sign of Capricorn, which is about the structures of our lives, but also Capricorn is about elderhood. Okay, wise elderhood. The Cancer Capricorn axis is about birth to death. How are we nurturing this elder wisdom that we get without trying to stave off aging? How are we tapping into that is really what I get from this turning point at the middle degrees on the eclipses of Ceres squaring the south node and the north node. I've talked a lot about stepping into finding that core self, but part of that is really acceptance of the cycles of life and wisdom and elderhood and the pattern of life itself. Ceres is very much related to grief as well, and the cycles of nature, including our own cycles of birth, maidenhood, death, all those cycles, you know, and Ceres is about coming into acceptance that this is what we are here for, in my opinion. Okay, so later that day, Pallas, Athena, oh, I love that. I love that energy. But Pallas, Athena in Sagittarius, traveling over all my Sagittarius stellium, stations retrograde at 8 degrees and will come back and square Juno again, or they'll be traveling together for a while because they're both asteroids, and asteroids travel at similar speeds because they're all in the asteroid belt. But Pallas, Athena to Juno, both of them now retrograde. We are kind of going within and looking at that holistic, sacred contract with ourselves on this earth as useful, conscious beings, and using our wise owl energy to dip into that while these two are retrograde. On to Saturday, the 30th, and then I'm going to pull a couple of cards. The moon, we missed it moving into Scorpio. Follow my daily blog, but the moon's been in Scorpio. But for the weekend, for next weekend, the moon will move into Sagittarius. I always love a Sagittarius moon weekend. Of course I would, because I am Sagittarius. But the moon will conjunct Pallas Athena, as she's still at her station point, saying, you know, yes, let's take a big look at this and find the truth about what we really are shooting our arrows towards, what our vision is, what we really believe in, what wonderment we can find in the world. That keeps coming up for me as well, that term. Right after the moon conjuncts, in fact, let's get to that. Actually, let's kind of get close to it. Oh, I can't get to that one for some reason. I will get to, where's my Lilith? She's not on there. Oh my goodness, how could she not be on there? Let me just add her. Asteroid Lilith. I'm finding Asteroid Lilith very, very loud speaking to me at the moment. So I'm just going to add her back in, and there she is. So she's been traveling with Pallas Athena as well. Pallas Athena didn't quite get there, but the moon is going to come up and conjunct Asteroid Lilith on Saturday afternoon next week while the moon's in Sagittarius, and Lilith also stations retrograde just before that conjunction, like literally, oh, it's just over an hour apart. Okay, and the sun over here comes up and trines this. So this fire, creative, passionate, drive and will, even though it's very internal because the moon is waning, is very much about creating something new. What project are you starting? What are you going to kind of launch out of this eclipse season, kind of starting? What vision do you have for your ideal life, say? Sagittarius is very idealistic, and this is all at 1 degrees. And this is very much about launching that, you know, feminine energy that I've talked about constantly. And again, I'm not talking about just women. I'm talking about that creative, connected, fairy tale energy, that really stepping into that magical creative energy, as well as the energy of doing and taking action, which is very Aries, that we've had an overabundance of for far too long. And the moon will actually, right after that as well, come up and trine the North Node, leading us towards where we're going on that eclipse. Okay, so finishing up the week, we move on to March the 31st, Sunday, and I'll move into Monday morning as well. But we do have the biggest energy. So we've got quite a lot of stations and planets or planetary bodies changing direction, and sign changes. We've got a sign change coming up as well. What's that one? So on the 31st, Vesta, the sacred inner flame of devotion and commitment, has been retrograde. She was in Cancer and she went retrograde back into Gemini, but now she moves back into Cancer, the sign of birth and the moon's sign, if you remember. And we are in the eclipse season, which is new and full moons, and the Lunar wants to scratch me. But this is about self-care, self-love, about rebirthing something else, about kind of going into that kind of womb energy in the sign of Cancer, ready to birth something else just a week later on the new moon solar eclipse. That's really huge. But this, with Vesta being this flame figure, you know, it looks like a flame. If you can see it here, I see her as this sacred inner flame inside. So really kind of maybe do some meditation, imagining, or a shamanic journey, looking at yourself in this flame energy. Okay, so Vesta changes signs on the 31st. And then we go to April the 1st. And I am going to just look in the early part of April the 1st. The moon will move into Capricorn. So back to work Monday morning, more serious Capricorn, more kind of like, I'm going to build this and I'm going to do this kind of energy. So we see April the 1st, Monday, the moon moves into Capricorn very early on the East Coast of April Fool's Day. And we don't have any major aspects except the lunar aspects, which I'll write about daily, until later on that day. But I do want to give you a heads up on this forecast, and I'll talk about it again next week. The April the 1st is the day that Mercury goes retrograde at 27 degrees, 13 minutes of Aries. At the same time, Mars, Aries ruler, will oppose Juno. So I'll look at all that in more detail next week. But this is a really powerful station retrograde, not only because Mercury is going retrograde right in the middle of the eclipses on April the 1st, which is our calendar date, but, you know, Fool's Day, April, Aries is very like new start. It's not quite the Fool because that's Uranus in the tarot, but it is the first sign, the first card. We're really kind of tricking the universe, if you like, or tricking ourselves into this wholeness kind of energy. But I do want to say that Mercury is going to station retrograde in a trine aspect to the galactic center. I'll talk more about this next week, but this Mercury retrograde is going to be off the charts for information incoming, for transmutation, for transformation of ideas and thoughts, and bringing new information down into you. Of course, that also means that Mercury is in a semi-sextile to Neptune in Pisces. It's big. I will probably do a whole video on the Mercury retrograde, but I do want to kind of warn you that you really need to put yourself in a space to receive these messages. Now then, which deck shall I use? I've actually tidied up my desk, so first time in ages. It's kind of like, oh my goodness, I have surface under here. And I'm just going to pull you a couple of cards because I actually have to get going. Realised I'm quite late, or I will be if I don't move myself. And then I will get this off to you in a short while. Week ahead, wow. This is an eclipse season and a half for so many reasons. I'm not going to list them all again, but you know, just trust me, it is. And it's, I don't think of it as a bad eclipse season personally, but it does depend how your chart's being hit. Okay, so this one fell out, and I'm just going to stick with this. This again is the Tree Devia deck. There's a discount code in the description if you like this card. I'm really liking this for eclipses because eclipses are usually the moon and the sun blacked out, and this has the black background. But this is the star card. This is the Aquarius card. And look at this beautiful kind of energy on this star card as the water bearer brings down the energy of the cosmos to Earth. And that brings me to, is Aquarius water or air, or both? Perhaps it's both. So the star card is 17, which is 17 is 1 plus 8, which is of course an 8, and we're in an 8 year. So this is a magical time filled with hope and faith, good vibes and positive energy. You might feel inspired and guided by the universe. Use this time to connect with your spiritual side and align with your soul's desires and rediscover your sense of meaning and purpose. Calmness and stillness will birth great ideas which can transform your life and the lives of people around you. Now, find calmness and stillness. I can only do that through movement. So, you know, if you are like me, don't feel that you have to kind of just sit cross-legged going on. If that works for you, super. But my walking is meditation. I do active imagination, shamanic journeying. But the affirmation for this card is, I find magic in everyday life. So think of that as you go through this week and say, I find magic in everyday life. Perhaps start your day with that affirmation and then look for the magic and know that it's there if you look for it. Okay. So much love to you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, watch that Melanie Reinhardt interview. I also did another video looking at Chariklo or Chariklo's discovery chart and the lunar eclipse with that, because it is majorly activated. So we're bringing back to things that started to come in 1997. All right. Much love. See you next time.